I've just seen a link on the British Muslims for Secular Democracy group, and the link basically shows some snapshots from Twitter, which are responding to um, a man who has been accused of blasphemy in Pakistan. Apparently, he's a well-known blogger. I have to admit, I don't know much about this guy, but I'm very familiar with the blasphemy situation in Pakistan. It's not the first time I've seen this mentality. I'm going to read out a few of these tweets, and I warn you they're pretty extreme. But this is the sort of mentality that is going on there. Just to be clear, these are tweets against a blogger who's been accused of blasphemy. He's an ex-Muslim, and apparently he runs a website criticizing Islam, or at least criticizing the blasphemy laws. Here we go. That's how you bring peace to the world. Hang those who try to spread fitna and hurt others' feelings. Hang Ayaz Nizami, so all blasphemers get lesson from him and stop these dirty blasphemous devil activities. Hang all blasphemers ASAP. Drill a hole in his head by a 50 caliber round from an AMR. Do the same to his pals too. Islam is the most peaceful religion of the world, but when anyone say wrong about our beloved Prophet, he will be hanged. We demand from our government to hang this impure blasphemer Ayaz Nizami. We love Hazrat Muhammad and will love him till death. Hang Ayaz Nizami. No compromise over religious matters, and on the Hurmat of our beloved Prophet, hang monsters publicly. He must be dragged in the street and hanged. Call me extremist, so what? But there is no compromise over the Hurmat of Prophet, peace be upon him. You get the idea. Now that's eight comments I've read out. I guarantee you in Pakistan there are millions of people who have this mentality. Millions. Um, when I read things like this, I feel sickened because in Pakistan this is the norm. In Pakistan, these people are not extremists; they're the norm. And before anyone says I'm kind of vilifying Pakistan as a country, vilifying Pakistani people, there are good Pakistanis out there. There are open-minded Pakistanis, secular Pakistanis, atheist Pakistanis, but they are in a very dangerous situation because if they do speak out, they will be targeted. Anyway, the reason I'm giving this is for a bit of context because I've spoken a lot about Islamism in its terrorist form. I haven't spoken so much about Islam itself. And that to me is something that is just as important because we are constantly bombarded in democratic countries about how we should be tolerant of all faiths and how we shouldn't say things that might offend people. I have to be honest, I sometimes feel utter disgust at the cozy attitude so many in the left seem to have with Islam. It's the worst sort of virtue signaling. Now, this is not everybody on the left. There are a few exceptions. Bill Maher would probably be more associated with the political left, but he's also known for being politically incorrect and for not being afraid to confront Islam. As I speak, I feel a deep sense of frustration, but also fear, quite honestly. Not fear from Islamic extremism, but fear that the left is placating this. Now we may not have the ability to change this backward situation in Pakistan, this insane, sick, poisonous, primitive mentality that pervades in countries like Pakistan. We may not be able to directly change that, but what we can do is take some control within our own jurisdiction. Now, I take the view that British Pakistanis need to make a choice. Either you support liberal democratic values or you go back to Pakistan. I take the view that British Pakistanis who support blasphemy laws don't deserve to be here. I really believe that very strongly. I'm quite frank that I don't give a rat's ass if people misinterpret that as being racist. How is it racist when I am defending the right of those brave Pakistanis who do speak out? Um, this is not unique. I've seen it in other parts of the world, and not just connected with religion either. The Les Majest situation in Thailand is comparable because you get the same sort of fanaticism and bloodlust from those who want to brutally suppress free speech. But within religions, I mean, every religion you will get pockets of sensitivity. Certainly, you get Hindu nationalists in India who are prepared to commit murder to defend the image of Hinduism. And you would get certain Christian fundamentalists in parts of Africa, again, are prepared to do that. But I think what's different with Islam is you get this bizarre coziness that so much on the left seem to have with it. You know, as an example of this, there's an organization in the UK called Hope Not Hate. Now, they're not as bad as some groups because they won't completely ignore Islamic extremism, but nevertheless, you get the impression that they're far, far more outspoken against neo nationalist groups such as the ADL and Britain First. I'm not particularly a fan of those groups because I don't particularly like the approaches that they take. But when I see the sort of things that are going on in Pakistan, and I see the attitude of Western liberals to downplay this, to denounce anyone who attacks this as being an Islamophobe, I feel sick. When I look at what's happened in Canada, when emotion being pushed to essentially say that Islam is above criticism. Its defenders say that's not what it is, but that is what it is going to become. It's a slippery slope. I just feel a great sense of frustration, but it's almost like I want to say I know, I can see how Galileo must have felt. I mean, I just can't comprehend how people can think this way. Well, I can comprehend it because this is what religious fanaticism does. It brainwashes people. And the thing is, any one of these people, you could meet them on the street and they might be very friendly. They might, be very welcoming, and that's what's so scary about religious extremism. It's not always obvious. It's not always in your face. Sometimes it takes situations like so-called blasphemy to bring out their ugly soul, and that's something I find so utterly chilling. There are good Pakistanis out there, like the late Abdul Sattar Eti, a man who devoted his life to helping the poor. Pakistan's a big country, it's got a lot of people, but there is unquestionably a widespread mentality in that country that really does view blasphemy this way, and it isn't just Pakistan. You get it in other Islamic states. In Bangladesh, dozens of people have been murdered, on allegations of blasphemy. Now, Bangladesh is not as conservative as Pakistan. The government hasn't quite, it looks like they may be going down a path of placating the Islamists. And sadly, this is being seen in other countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, which are not traditionally deeply religiously conservative countries, not in the same way as Iran or Pakistan. But I really, really think that we need to get this right in liberal democracies. Um, we may have trade with Pakistan, we may have cross cultural relations because of shared history and so on, but if we cannot speak out on this sort of thing, at the very least within the UK, I get that it might be difficult to change it within a country like Pakistan, but at the very, very least, we can be saying in this country there is absolutely no place for Islamic attitudes to blasphemy. And what I find disgusting about left wing thinking on this is that they feel it is more important to send out the message that they're nice and rosy and get on with everyone, and hey, Islam's not a problem. They think that is more important than standing up for human rights. This is one of the things I find most insufferable about the left is their rank hypocrisy, because the very same people will claim that they believe in so many progressive values, and yet when it comes to what really matters, speaking up on human rights, they're quiet. I'm not saying they should get into the thick of it, but at the very least, they need to be honest about this. But when people do speak out and these things are immediately dismissed as pandering to the far right, hating Muslims, etc., etc., etc. For myself, I don't hate Muslims. I think, it's not rational to hate 1.5 billion people, but I do believe Islam is not a peaceful religion. I do believe it is not a tolerant religion, and I do believe it has deeply entrenched. I just feel disgusted because even saying this, I'm fully aware that there are left wing news networks, left wing publications who would not publish these sort of comments because they are quivering with fear. And I think they have the moral, I think they have the morality of a sponge in the sense that they're totally, totally, totally weak, quivering cards when it comes to what actually matters. If you really profess to be a liberal, if you really profess to believe in values, how can you, on one hand, for example, be consistent when you're attacking right wing Christians, but being utterly apathetic to the barbaric things done in the name of Islam? And I'm not just talking about terrorism. That's a big issue here because very often we hear things like Muslims condemn terrorism. My response: so what? So what? It's the easiest thing in the world to condemn terrorism. What I want to see is attitudes to apostasy. Tricky word to pronounce that. You know, when you start probing, when you start seeing people's attitudes to blasphemy, to apostasy, that sort of thing, their criticism of terrorism, as far as I'm concerned, means nothing. I have no doubt all these people would condemn ISIS, but the idea they want a brutal public execution of someone who has offended their religion, it shows a lot of things. It shows just how regressive Pakistani society is, but it also shows that far from being a strong religion, Islam is actually a deeply, deeply thin skinned religion. I mean, if Islam is so powerful, why does it need people to defend it in this barbaric, brutal way? I am so grateful I live in a country where I can speak my mind, but that is not a guarantee. If we go down the path that Canada has went down, and I know it's not a law at the moment, but I really don't blame Canadians for feeling enraged about that. And the more I think about it, the less sympathy I've got for this woman, Ikra Khalid. Apparently, she received death threats. Now, I don't condone that. It's not the right way to go about things. But she cannot whinge about getting a backlash, but she is trying to restrict freedom of conscience. I mean, look at what's going on in a country like Pakistan, and she wants to make it a criminal offence to. It sickens me, really does. I just feel depressed, to be honest. I feel angry, but I do feel depressed as well because it's this lazy mentality that if you criticize Islam, that means that you're a bigot, you hate Muslims. I don't much like Muslims who defend this, but do I hate Muslims? Of course not. It's stupid to hate 1.5 billion people, and I've known Muslims in my life who've been thoroughly decent, open minded people. In fact, there will be Muslims who absolutely condemn this as well, but they would have to accept that this is a fundamental problem within Islam. We're not even talking about terrorism here. I'm not even talking about Islamist terrorism. I'm talking about a problem within the religion of Islam. And I just know the mentality that is out there. If if I get up in a program like Question Time and said this, you would get boos from the crowd because sheep, people who cannot think for themselves, people who want the virtue signal by showing that they're tolerant, wouldn't stop for a second to think, well, wait a second, this guy's actually talking about human rights. That's why Western countries really, really, really have to be careful when we are placating Islam. And I think for too damn long, our governments have been scared shitless of simply speaking out. If the British government tomorrow said blasphemy laws are barbaric, we have no place for blasphemy laws in this country, there would probably be protests from the Pakistani embassy. But this is our country. They can enact their brutal laws with society if they want, but we have to be assertive. We have to be assertive. I mean, think of it this way: 500 years ago, we were burning people at the stake for heresy because they were Protestants or Catholics. And we look back at that time as brutal because that's what it was. But that's happening today in Pakistan. I just feel sick, to be quite honest, looking at this. And this poor soul, Ayaz Nizami, I wish I could help him. But what can I do? I could write to the British government to put pressure on the Pakistani government. I could write to the Pakistani embassy and give them what for. I don't know if it would help. I think the only thing that would help is it might not even help. I do think the Western countries need to be assertive and stand up for our values. We do not stand up for our values when we show appeasement. We show apathy to this sort of mindset. If you are more concerned about the ADL than you are about Islamic intolerance, you have a problem. And I'm so, so, so sick of the gutlessness that so many in the left show. And actually, a few on the right as well. A few on the right as well. Baroness Varzi, the Tory former minister, she has often went into this argument, oh, it's got nothing to do with religion. So there are a few on the right that placate it as well. It sickens me.